appreciate you doing that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we can take a look at the agenda and adjust it if anyone has any urgent matters that you would like to cover. We probably don't need the entire 35 or so minutes that we have left for this, but we were going to have you, Elizabeth, cover some ACT updates, some ACT national programming updates. And then Dominic, you had offered to catch us up on the survey committee project that we discussed at the international conference, the meeting that happened there in person. I've got some thoughts to get some feedback on the communications committee idea. We talked about doing a one-pager, and so we can touch on that. And then I think, Elizabeth, there was maybe a late breaking discussion in the ACT offices about a virtual discussion that could be relevant to this group, and we can sort of bounce some thoughts around on that as well. So it's a pretty good list. Anything that I have overlooked that you'd like to add? Okay, we'll go ahead with this. If you think of something, just feel free to chat it, or there's a small enough group we can just all jump in. So with that, Elizabeth, I'll go ahead and hand the floor to you.
Well, thank you. So I know we've been chatting, but it's nice to see you all. And so I feel like things are a little quiet. You know, the duck that looks like it's paddling smoothly, but its feet are frantically going. That's kind of how things are right now. It looks calm, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Obviously, with the TDM forum being postponed into December and shifted to virtual, there's a lot of kind of shifting of all of that, but hopefully you will all be able to attend that. And then the other big thing that's going on that I wanted to make sure you guys are aware of is that we've started planning for the 2022 International Conference in Chicago. The conference committee has already met, and the call for sessions will be going out soon. Maybe it already did. But what is relevant to the councils is that, as you know, hopefully all councils get 2 sessions in the international conference. So you will be able to put together 2 different shuttle focused sessions, but those are due in December. So that's something that I encourage you to start thinking about as soon as possible. And it's the same. So the system is called Cadmium, and you probably won't necessarily see that, but the email that will go out, has that information. And so the website that you use to submit that information is Cadmium. But we're looking for, complete sessions, which you guys have the ability to do. And then you just indicate that it's a council session. And so it's kind of a shoe-in. But Casey will probably have questions for, to follow up with the councils and stuff like that. But just be aware that's not that far away now, December. So that's the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And then we'll discuss the virtual discussion down the road.
Okay. Certainly with it being December, the first thing that comes to mind is Jeremy's opening comment about, this being next year being a year of transition, and it being a little difficult for us to, by December's timeframe, look into a crystal ball and know what might be relevant to an August conference. So I know that one of the things we did last year, even with a shorter time frame, because we launched the council so close to the date of the conference, is we developed an abstract that had some latitude in it that allowed us to sort of take it any direction. So that might be something that we can keep in mind as we brainstorm on this. We've got a few months, but yeah, appreciate the heads up on that.
That's always the tricky part with the conferences, that you have to submit something so far in advance. So yeah.
Especially now.
Do we want to have a working session around those topics specifically? Because just given everything we all have on our plate, there's going to be some legwork for us to do to at least pitch the ideas.
I agree. In fact, we've been looking for, some themes to maybe convene everyone and do a coffee chat or something like that. Maybe we can, or a happy hour for that matter, depending on time of day and everybody's preferences. But maybe we can combine that, a working session around conference topics and brainstorm a bit. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's good because we could also always reach out back into the bag and talk about things, whether it's weather response or best practices, items that will always be relevant, I think, to our membership group if we need if we're trying to forecast out for August and really don't know where we're at on return to service.
Right.
You mentioned weather response, and I admit that emergency preparedness is a pet topic of mine. And so whenever I'm always trying to encourage people to, talk about that because it is something that impacts everybody. We just experienced a nor'easter here in New England, and the office was without power. So needless to say, none of us went into the office. But that's a topic that I think people don't spend enough time talking about. So.
For sure. And just given the different climate regions around the US, it can be everything from in the South losing power and having heat issues, so to speak, to, significant rainfall to snow where I'm at. Yeah, I think it's something good to, we don't need, I don't want to hijack this meeting and say, hey, let's come up with a discussion here, but that's where my head went is, man, I don't know what August of next year looks like. So what are some things I can fall back on?
Yep.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have some of those evergreen topics that end users are very focused on. So we have our first topic for brainstorming. Thank you, Jerry. Any other thoughts come to mind? Dominic, Jeff?
Well, as I mentioned to you, John, I think that our first survey should be completed and analyzed by then. So a session on the survey results would be a candidate.
Perfect. Item number 2. And you said, Elizabeth, you said we are on the hook for 2?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
So you could even run with those 2, right? And like a session proposal on survey results doesn't have to be detailed. You can just say the survey will be done and we'll be presenting on it. So I think that's good. People really like survey result presentations. So I think that would be definitely a good topic.
Right, especially if you put a number in the title, like 7 conclusions from the survey on the.
Exactly. Yep.
Good bait. Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, I'll start that list, create a shared doc that we can extend out to all the members, and I'll take the action item of scheduling that working session. Maybe put a doodle poll out and find some times that work for everyone. Combine it with a little coffee or some sort of refreshment as we approach the end of the year. Okay. Perfect transition, Dominic, to your topic on the agenda. I know you had some updates for us and have been meeting with some other volunteers. So why don't we go ahead and touch on that?
Yeah, let me give you a few minutes on that. So yes, myself, Sean Kelly, We Drive You, Paul Mev, Datco, and Tim Bilbao, One Commute. So we've met a couple of times so far. Done a bunch of things. So we've done an internal process amongst the group of us to get to a draft of the questions we want to answer, and that's nearly complete. We spoke to David Strauss, so I did, and ACT have a Survey Monkey account, so he provided Jim with a login to the Survey Monkey account, so we start drafting things in that and be using that for the actual survey tool. I had a chat to the people who run the Van Pool Council because they'd done a survey, and I think it was interesting. I think we have a somewhat larger and different problem than they have. I got their views on the survey that they did. I also spoke to David about there's a couple of issues. One is around being able to present or to have a link to, for example, to survey respondents to say, here is ACT's data privacy policy. So he's drafted one of those, and he's having your legal counsel look at it, I think, so that there's something there that we can point to. Also, of having the committee members sign an NDA and be known that we've done so, because I think it's going to be hard to get people to challenge, to get people to respond, and knowing what's happening to the data they provide. So yeah, still working on that. But what are the commitments we can make and the policies that we can present to people to encourage them to give us their data? Targeting towards the end of Q1, I think, to actually get the survey out, and I'll be looking for help from. I was going to reach out soon to people like the heads of the employee council and the universities council and so on, to get them to say this is coming, and we'll be looking for you. Guilt trip them to get some help from them, pushing out to their members to get them to respond to that. So I'll be lining that up soon. Let me see what else is going on. Yeah, I mean, lots of thoughts. Making sure we explain to people about the value of the survey, what's going to happen to it. So have some blurb, putting together some blurb around that. The other thing in general, in terms of, I like this idea, was Jim's idea in terms of structure, is we had a pretty good agreement on what the top priority questions are and things we want to ask people. But I think, who is it? 23andMe are good at this, so we'll have a longer tail of questions. So yeah, once people we have 6 questions for you. Yeah, they've answered the 6 questions. They say, well, while you're here, we've got 6 more. You got a minute, and encourage people to answer more if they will. So we're working on that. We can do that kind of structure in SurveyMonkey and have branching and things like that. So that's kind of where we are.
So Dominic, just for some context, do you happen to have handy maybe a couple of examples of the types of initial questions that you might ask? I think I'm even thinking of Jeff Bennett here on the call as a potential respondent to some of the questions. They're running programs there and helping people move around as well.
Hang on there, let me, where's that gone? There we go. Yeah, so questions like, so how many, and first of all, by the way, what we decided very early on, so this is going to be, we're specifically going to be going to people like Jeff, and to companies and TMAs, and landlords, if that's applicable. So not looking to operators to disclose anything about their clients, because they won't, and nor should they be expected to. So questions like, so how many vehicles are in daily operation now, with how many average riders per day? How many vehicles do you expect to have in daily operation in 2 years' time? Do you use a technology system? The wording needs to be tightened up on this one about the technology they use. What industries do you serve? What region are you in? How are your services funded between corporate, state, federal, fair revenue, grants, and so on? So those are some of the kinds of questions that we've, all of which will need wordsmithing and tightening up.
All right. That sounds great. I mean, I think there's such a, especially when you move from the operators to the lack of a better term, let's call it sponsoring organizations, because they fall into so many categories. Yeah, those of us here in Massachusetts are very different than a lot of the TMAs. Particularly with shuttle operations, we seem to be very different than elsewhere in the country. So the scale of the variety I think you're going to get in the responses is going to be pretty high.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
Any other questions on that?
Just one, Dominic, just to confirm the scope, I think that we agreed that it would be a survey of ACT membership. So presenting the data back as a picture of the state of responses, but across the ACT community, as opposed to opening it up to non-ACT members at least the first go of this, the first year. Is that still the plan?
I think probably. I mean, I think we'd like to expand it as we go. I mean, that's most likely if we can get. Now, that's a question we need to perhaps haven't discussed, but if we do get other people that we can say, well, hey, they're able to do so, then. And now the flip side of that is. And I was talking to David about this, is say, okay, this is, I mean, obviously anything that was described out, it'll all be anonymized and aggregated and so on, right? But again, even the anonymized data only available to, as a benefit of ACT membership, only available to ACT members.
Okay.
Okay.
I think, at least to throw my 2 cents in on this, would need to be, I think the reason why we initially threw the box around the ACT membership is whether it's region or service or what have you, the overall scale of possible respondents was pretty significant. I mean, thousands upon thousands of, whether it's municipalities or corporate campuses or what have you. So if we do end up going that avenue of reaching out outside the ACT membership, which is like the guidelines we've set initially, I think we need to figure out what our tracking is for that, knowing that our plans in the end state were to continue to broaden this research. So I don't think it's necessarily an issue. It's just we need to be very cognizant of how we're tracking that, as it would, I at least in my mind, would throw off some key data points if we're saying, hey, this is the ACT membership is the defining like report initially, but we have outside entities influencing that. But I'm also, Dominic, not trying to tell you how to do your research project whatsoever. So
Okay.
Could you
in short, please figure it out. Okay.
well, I'm happy to like help or whatever. Like,
Okay.
I'm not trying to just say, oh, here's your crap sandwich and deal with it. So to speak. But I do want to be like, at least have the parameters clear each time, because I think this could be a really beautiful project that goes on for years and is able to be reported on as more and more info comes in. That I could have a lasting impact, on all of our short times here. So I do get excited because it's something we've tried to do privately over the years, without much avail, and it's something that creates a really powerful statement about, our impact, whether it's from a tech side, from an operator side, from a management side, right? And so that's what gets me so fired up about this.
Okay, cool. No, it's good. I made a note. It's a good idea. Okay, cool.
Is it, I don't know with surveys if there's any value to this, but would there be an opportunity to compare what's going on in survey results with ACT members to non-ACT members?
I'd say eventually.
Yeah, like, because that would be a good reason to kind of keep them separated as you go forward. So.
Okay.
That's a good point for some sort of benchmarking. But yeah, I would echo the comments. I think it's wonderful for us to be able to quantify the impact across ACT. And, the analogy that I think of is in the Bay Area Council, having done their analysis over the years and quantified across all shuttle providers, the employers that are running programs and TMAs and properties that are running programs, and looking at that in aggregate is just really powerful. And that's just for a region of the country. So being able to do the same across ACT, being a marketer, of course, I'm picturing the infographics and cool stuff that will come from this that allow us to tell not only the story of the Shuttle Council and more importantly of the end organizations that are doing some great work on behalf of their commuters, but also the organization as a whole. So
yes, the only observation I make there is bear in mind, Joanna, that clearly the Bay Area Council had funding to spend on graphics.
That's right, but you've got some really willing volunteers.
There you go.
So yeah, I certainly understand. It's nice to be able to farm out, an Excel spreadsheet with 100 tabs to a graphic design agency to do some cool stuff.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
If only we all lived in that world every day, I would be a much happier person myself. So
You guys don't live in that world? No. Just
I wish. I know, just you guys, Jeremy. Good. Well, thank you, Dominic. Appreciate you leading the charge and raising your hand at the conference to move this forward. It's a big project, and certainly anything that you need from any of us, let us know on leadership from the council. And I know Elizabeth, is happy to relay any needs to ACT. And it sounds like you're in direct contact with David. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. That takes us to the communications committee piece, which I've offered to continue to spearhead until I get, a really active set of volunteers to support that side of things. I do have Craig Nessler from Zila, who has offered to assist on this, and that's why I wanted to bring it to our meeting today. We had previously discussed, at the recommendation of Maureen, the creation of some sort of one pager, for lack of any better term, but picture a PDF deliverable that comes out from the council, something as an intermediate step before we, deliver this big thump factor survey analysis in 2022. And one of the ideas that was discussed at the international conference was something that profiled the impact that shuttles have had throughout the pandemic, being able to move essential workers, do things in creative ways, whether that be for communities or for employees of companies, or multi-tenant kinds of situations. But we talked about something along those lines. And so I started to think about that and bounce some things off of Craig as well, along the lines of like micro case studies, again, for lack of a better term, but something that was just very easy to consume, given the audience where everybody's pressed for time. Something that could be delivered as easily as a PDF and attached to an ACT member newsletter as it could be repurposed as a blog post. And the thought would be, putting a call out for nominations isn't the right word, but maybe submissions, and almost using an electronic form with very simple, maybe it's 5-7 fields. And it really is just out there to put feelers out and find innovative programs that did some great work for essential workers, like I said, during the pandemic, or are continuing to move people in creative, cost-effective, and efficient ways and safe ways. I would bet, between the operators on the committee, the OEMs on the committee, the tech companies, and folks like you, Jeff, who are running these types of programs, we could probably find, more than a handful of these programs and recognize them. The timeline for that, I don't know. It would probably be the next couple of months, perhaps, that we could gather this information and then look to, a new year kind of inspirational piece that comes out. I'm happy to put resources towards the layout and design of that. Craig's offered to help. And I know we have some other folks that have raised their hand for communications. So just throwing that out there to see what you think about the idea, if you think it would be, timely, relevant to folks, and if they would be interested in doing that. And most importantly, making sure that we're not replicating something that already exists in the marketplace or with ACT.
I'll just say that's something that I think we would be happy to, contribute some of the content behind it as as it takes shape. We did a lot of work with, we're heavily serving the life sciences sector here as an example. So, we had small riders, but they were very, small numbers of riders, but they're very critical and kept going. So the scale of the work that we did in terms of how do we safely operate the shuttles during the pandemic. I know we've already, some of my colleagues have done some stuff for ACT already on that, but if there's any way that stuff can be, repurposed and put back into the council stuff, we're happy to do that.
That's great, Jeff. Well, thank you for offering. And I think that's exactly the kind of thing that we'd be looking for if we moved ahead with this type of piece. It's those early efforts that rebuild confidence in commuting, that people can do it safely. And so, this wouldn't be the quest to find the biggest ridership necessarily, but just really innovative approaches and safe and thoughtful and compliant approaches to moving folks around. So I am familiar with the work that you do, of course, and I think that would certainly be worthy of consideration. And like I said, I think, putting a call out, I could be wrong, but I would be surprised if we did not find others that are willing to be recognized for their efforts. So if there are no objections to that, what I'll probably do is work with Craig and see if I can rally some other volunteers to kind of help us scope this and put some questions together and bring it back to the committee and bounce some things. And Jeff, you know, you being somebody who might respond to this type of thing, welcome your thoughts on that, you know, in a way that's, we're just not looking to add a lot more to people's plates, just kind of, like you said, repurpose some of the work that you've already done and communicated in other venues.
Yeah, I'm happy to help with that, and you know, so let me know if there's something we can do, and
Cool.
yeah, if we can help sort of reframe, you know, frame those questions through the eyes of you know, an operating agency.
Excellent. I will take you up on that. Okay. Good. Well, that might be, you know, at least an intermediate deliverable as we await all the hard work by the survey committee. So perfect. Any thoughts on that? Send my way. And Jeremy, you probably, you know, have some folks that you can help spread the word, and they might like to be considered. So with that, I'm just going to move on to the other topics. And I only had that one. Elizabeth, you had talked about this virtual discussion. Did you want to jump back in?
So this is something that sort of bubbled up in the last couple of weeks. So reviewing the chapter and council quarterly reports, it was mentioned in a couple of different places about driver shortages, both related to buses, shuttles, and van pools. And so Casey and I have been trying to figure out what's the next big, good virtual discussion topic. And we want it to be something where people will actually have a discussion around, because a lot of times, you know, we want people to talk, right? That's the whole point of it. And so this seemed timely, and it's kind of a 3-part topic, I guess I would say. So the topics that came up out of the quarterly reports were driver shortages. The other thing that came up was people talked about van pools and how van pool agencies are trying to figure out if people either aren't going back to work or are nervous about getting back in their van pools, you know, what else can they do to promote non-SOV driving? So kind of trying to figure out the uncertainty around van pooling and pivoting. And then the other one is working with the telework council to find what they're seeing in terms of telework and the hybrid workspace and stuff like that. So that's kind of it's all the same topic overall, but it's 3 different ways, you know, 3 different things that people are grappling with in different ways. And so I was hoping that couple people perhaps from the Shuttle Council would be interested and available. We don't have a date yet. We're just trying to find speakers, and then we can kind of figure out, you know, they're always a Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. But if we had people who are willing to come with, you know, what have they tried to solve whatever challenge they're facing, what worked and what didn't work, to get those conversations starting and try to pull that out of the audience. So I'm hoping that somebody from this group would be interested in doing that. Your bigger group, not just those of us who are here on the call today.
Mm-hmm.
And it would probably it'll be before Thanksgiving, most likely. We probably wouldn't, but we won't do it in the next couple of weeks.
So the audience for this would be all ACT members.
Yep, the virtual discussions are members only.
Okay.
And they're casual conversations. It's not intended to be a presentation. It's usually, you know, here's a list of questions, and we like to try to have a couple of people on hand who are prepared to talk about it, so that they can share, you know, their example, kind of answer some of the questions, or maybe ask others. And then the idea is that it's promoted in such a way that people will bring their ideas, their concerns, their challenges, their successes, and be able to really have a conversation around it. So not a PowerPoint and then 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. It's literally a slide and Q&A all the way through. So. we know everybody likes to talk to each other, but sometimes we get in these virtual discussions and nobody wants to say anything. So we're trying to find who's going to be the first person to speak. So,
I mean, inherently, we've encountered this kind of head on. I think I don't necessarily know what the solve is, and that's especially focusing specifically on the driver's side. I mean, we've jacked up wages significantly, benefits, PTO, flexible work schedule. I mean, like bonus. I mean, we have thrown the kitchen sink at this thing in terms of financially, and haven't seen stark improvement anywhere. Like, it's not like we change these things and our rate goes up and there's a direct return on investment. So it specifically around that challenge, I mean, my finger is pretty close on the pulse. I would love it if someone's like, hey, this is what you do, and you just do it. Because literally per employee, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars for each person we bring on, like significant amount of capital on marketing, on getting them in here, on retention. And it ends up being, I mean, it's not even about service at some point anymore. It's like, who has drivers, right? Which is a scary place to be in, just given the lack of workforce existing in that space. So I guess it sounds like I'm being a Debbie Downer on this idea. I would love to be a part of that discussion, and will definitely attend if it was around drivers. I would be happy to speak my mind on it. It's something I'm passionate about, but I also, there's a lot of stuff that's dynamic right now that I don't know there is necessarily a solution for. I haven't heard of anyone who isn't having this problem.
Yeah, I would echo that, Jeremy. If there was a secret sauce to this, we wouldn't, we'd be in a different place. We'd all be in a different place.
I feel like we would have found it already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the only hesitation I have is I wouldn't want to, approach a call like that and just lament about, that we're kind of all in the same boat. Maybe we can think about how we frame the question.
Yeah, and like I said,
sorry,
it's
Jeff.
not set in stone yet, so that's why we're trying to feel it out. So
yeah, I think there could be a couple potential questions to frame it around too, because the perspective is going to be very different from an actual fleet operator versus organizations like mine that contract and manage the services, because it is such we look at the problem from very different perspectives, but we're all in the same boat together at this point.
right.
Because we're all feeling the impacts of it. And I wouldn't discount, Jeremy, the notion that just because we're all still feeling extremely frustrated by it and somewhat unable to find a solution, that maybe that's the reason why it does need to be talked about. If it was an obvious solution, we would have been figuring it out by now.
Man, Jeff, that's a great point. It definitely feels like I'm slamming my head up against a wall time and time again. So your point's really well received, and I think that may be all the more reason to have the discussion.
Yeah. I don't know if the timing will be of help to it in terms of there's a group that I sit on with the Boston MPO here that is actually doing a very similar style topic with our transit working group on the MPO, specifically on the driver shortage. And I was frantically looking to see if I could remember when it was. And it's not happening till November 17th. So,
interesting.
But whenever we do talk, that's a very limited group just to TMAs and operators here in the Boston market. But, certainly also, I'm intending to join that one. One of our major contractors that we use is going to hopefully be there. We'll see how it goes.
Well, and to your point, Jeff, maybe inputs from that, being able to kind of share back what you're hearing regionally. We'll be at the APTA conference, and no doubt that will be the topic du jour at APTA. So depending on when you slot this, Elizabeth, maybe it is an opportunity for us to just kind of bring these different inputs together and see if we see some common threads there.
When's the APTA conference? It's
8th, 9th, 10th of
right. Okay.
November.
Yeah.
There, there's like 5 different conferences that week.
Yeah, I know. Everybody
That's-
plan them.
Well, that's
So-
when everybody replanned them, right? Because I'm pretty sure that it's the APTA one that was supposed to be in the spring or something, and then it got rescheduled. So there's a lot of that going on. Yeah, and then, I mean, I was on the Valley of the Sun chapter, had a call about university stuff, and they also discussed driver shortages. So like and I mean, I mean, my question is, because I don't know, I used to work with public schools and they always had driver shortages for school bus drivers. And I don't know what kind of overlap school bus drivers have, like because school buses only run predominantly run in the morning and then the afternoon. And do those drivers drive elsewhere?
They're limited
other
on
times
hours.
or?
Yeah, great question. In general, a driver is limited by hours of service. So it's either 60 hours in 7 days or 70 hours in 8 days, depending on what standard you use for your business. I assume with We Drive You, it's similar to us. The clients we serve operate very similar to school bus hours, a lot of split shifts, morning and afternoon. So, and then there's also straight shifts, but even to that end, you're seeing this driver shortage, not just around operating buses, but long haul trucking, delivery vans. Like, so you look at UPS, FedEx, Amazon, what have you. Yeah, everyone's feeling this crunch. I mean, as a long haul over the road trucker right now, you could make about 250, 300 grand a year if you own your own truck. It's which is the highest it's ever been. So there's demand there's demand there in other areas too, where I could never go to that pay scale. Can you imagine, Joanna, what one of our clients would say if our hourly rate like quadrupled or 5x, 6x? And I think it brings into a broader discussion. But so Joanne or Elizabeth, sorry, there's a lot of similarities, but we're seeing it more across the board. Like even straight shifts, a straight 8 hours, which is like what everyone wanted 2 years ago, are really hard to fill.
Interesting. Okay.
That was a lot. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah, it's interesting because clearly it would be a great discussion, but it would be nice if there was something that could come out of it. And I don't know exactly what that would be. I mean, an obvious question would be, is there a policy implication? But I don't know what that would be, or if that's something that's even solvable by policy proposals. So.
Not necessarily. I've gone complete full circle on this, and you have Jeff to thank for that. I think this would probably be one of the most well attended, like everyone's impacted by this, and it would be a really interesting discussion regardless on the topic point. I feel like this would be well attended, and the only downside is in terms of outcomes. If everyone leaves it just being like, yep, everyone's in the same boat.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, maybe we just need to phrase the discussion as, what can we do as an association? What can we come together to do? And then see what ideas people might have around that. And I don't know that we can come up with those in an hour, but maybe it'll springboard something.
Well, and if it's paired with other topics, like you said, that are all related to pandemic recovery. So talking about, hesitancy, re-engaging in van pools, that has some implications. And also this notion of hybrid workspaces and the telework council wrapped into a broader conversation. I think it's very timely.
Yeah.
Keeping us all up at night. Literally.
Right. Okay, well, I'll circle back with Casey and tell her what we've discussed, and I'm sure she'll be in touch as we try to work this out, and just trying to figure out a date and stuff. So, so stay tuned, and thank you very much for all of your thoughts on that.
Thank you for bringing it to us. So with that, I want to keep us as close to on time as we can. We're a couple minutes over. We have some action items coming out of this, planning a working session for discussion about the ACT annual conference topics and sponsored sessions. Dominic will keep us posted on the survey project, and we'll start to see some draft materials, I think, circulated on that. I'll go back and like I said, rally communications committee members and look at how we can put a call for submissions out on some inspirational pandemic mobility stories. And Elizabeth, just keep us posted. We'll make sure that we do have some representation on that that virtual discussion if that gets scheduled.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn? Certainly
Joanne, are
appreciate.
you okay if we just send notes out to you and let you distribute to the broader list, or?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Thank you.
Cool.
And Jeff, thank you. Bennett, thank you for joining us today and providing input. Yeah, it was great to have a voice from your side of the story here. So
Yeah, no problem. We're happy to get more involved with this. I feel like because we weren't at the conference, it was a little hard for those of us that weren't in the room to follow the discussion. But the team here would be happy to get involved. The shuttles are a massive part of what we do, so we're very excited to see this council coming together. So keep us in the loop, and we'll see what we can do to help.
we certainly will. We appreciate you being involved. All
Thanks.
right, everyone. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.